Hey everyone, my name is Alan Gongora. I'm managing partner of Langen Law Group. And today we'll be talking about the importance of organizing a title analysis when you purchase property in Colombia. This is the third in a 5-part tutorial series explaining how to purchase property in Colombia. If you haven't seen our first set of videos, I highly encourage you to go back and watch those videos first. As always, let's get started with some things you should consider as you proceed with these particular set of tutorials. These tutorials are intended to help anyone interested in buying a single-family home or a condo in Colombia. Anyone buying property lots, pre-construction condos, and other types of property will find this tutorial to be very, very useful. However, feel free to check out our YouTube channel or our Facebook page because we might have already published additional tutorials that will focus on those types of transactions separately. The difficulty level for these tutorials is basic. This means that you don't need any prior understanding of this process, and you don't need any real specialized knowledge of the topic. It should be very user-friendly for anyone interested in buying property in Colombia. As always, keep in mind that these tutorials are only intended to provide general observations and suggestions. Remember, I am a U.S. New York licensed corporate attorney, and while everything you will hear and see has been reviewed and approved by Colombian attorneys, these tutorials are not intended to provide actual legal advice. We highly recommend that you consult with your own local attorney to discuss your own specific legal requirements. If you've purchased property before, then you definitely have had experience with a property title analysis. Bottom line, you do not want to proceed with a real estate transaction in Colombia without having a competent and independent attorney look under the hood to see if there are any actual risks to the transaction. A good title analysis will identify if the property has any mortgages, any liens, any other encumbrances, past due tax liabilities, a bunch of different things. A good title analysis will also figure out, for example, if the actual property boundaries match the registration documentation, if there are current tenants on the property, or maybe if there's a death of an earlier owner that created heirs that could contest ownership in the future. Here's our advice on this. Bottom line, what you do want at the end of this process is an official and comprehensive written opinion that you can use to adequately evaluate the risks involved in purchasing the property. What you do not want is, for example, a one-page summary of the deal terms, or even worse, some random person representing the seller just telling you that there will be no problem if you buy the property. That happens all the time in Colombia. Now, there are various ways to organize a valid title analysis, and here's how our local law firm does it. You first do an introduction to the seller or the seller's agent via email, or at least provide us with their contact information. We then request a ton of documents and information from the seller or the seller's agent. This can include everything from a copy of the property deed to the marital status of the seller. Our team then conducts a formal title analysis of that documentation and information and prepares a formal legal opinion. The formal legal opinion will eventually conclude one of three things. It's going to say something like, "Hey, John Smith," you're John Smith, "this investment looks pretty clean. We see very limited legal risks. Go for it." Or, "Hey, John, we found these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. Maybe there's a mortgage on the property. Maybe there's a lien. Maybe there is a past due tax bill. If the seller can take care of these things before title transfers, or you take care of these things afterwards because the risk to you is very low, go for it." Or, third possibility, and I want to emphasize this possibility, it'd be something like, "Hey, John, run. Don't look back. Don't even think about it. This is just not the property for you." And I want to emphasize this third possibility because every once in a while, we just don't recommend transactions. And this could be a big deal because some clients absolutely fall in love with properties, and we have to be the bad guys by telling them that they shouldn't buy that property. I want to mention something here that is absolutely critical in certain transactions, and that is the effect that culture can have on your purchase process. So let's say you're, again, John Smith, you're a British national, you live in London. I'm actually originally from New York City, and it turns out that I'm traveling through Europe, and I decided to stop by London to meet up with you. We're old buddies. We go to a pub for a drink, and as we're catching up, you mention that you are in the process of selling your home. Now, I used to live in the UK, and I've always wanted to go back and make London my European base. So I decided to come by your place just to check it out. And it turns out that I absolutely love your place. I love your house. And I tell you, John, I love this place. I definitely want to buy it. But you know what? Do you think you can send me these 20 things, documents, information requests, so that my own lawyer or real estate agent can organize a proper title analysis? And now, what are you gonna do? You're just gonna send me those 20 things. Because for you and for me, this is strictly a business transaction. And you can't always say the same thing in Colombia. If I'm the buyer and you're the seller and we're both Colombian, depending on the location, depending on the parties involved, chances are that maybe my grandmother has known your grandmother for 50 years, let's say. Or maybe I lived next door to that property for 20 years and I've known all the owners, I've known all the tenants. So by the time I, Colombian Alan, I want to buy your house and I do my own title analysis, that title analysis is going to be much more basic, much more informal. So when big bad law firm, us, contacts the seller or the seller's agent to get those 20 things that we need to do a proper title analysis, every once in a while we get some pushback. They might say something like, hey, whoa, why are you asking for so much information? They don't always say it directly, but the implication is, what? You don't trust us? And while we don't really say it directly, the answer is no, we don't trust you. We're in Colombia. We represent a foreign client. We have to get as much information as possible so we can finalize the most comprehensive title analysis possible. Here's our advice on this. If your local attorney gets this kind of pushback, just try to quarterback it a little bit, okay? Feel free to blame your lawyer. Believe me, they are absolutely used to it. The bottom line is the more information and documentation they can review, the more solid that title analysis will be. And obviously, the less risk you may be assuming in connection with this transaction. It should be noted that even the most solid title analysis may not uncover any number of issues with the subject property. That is because there could be issues with the property that are not readily apparent from just the documentation your lawyer will review. We will discuss this issue in a separate video tutorial. For now, here are some basic limitations inherent in the title analysis process in Colombia. Limitation number 1, errors in title. Unfortunately, a certain percentage of public records may include information that is incorrect. For example, listing a mortgage on the property that was canceled many, many years ago. Limitation number 2, fraudulent documentation. The seller or seller's agent may provide your local attorney with falsified documentation. This could obviously affect the objectivity of the title analysis. An example of this is public documents that fraudulently claim that the property doesn't owe any back taxes, for example. Limitation number 3, multiple sales. In Colombia, it is technically possible for a seller to sell the same property to multiple purchasers within a very short period of time. In this situation, your title analysis will not reveal the existence of a different purchaser until the issue is actually uncovered. In a worst case scenario, you may have to go to court to enforce your legal rights against both the seller and potentially a different buyer. Limitation number 4, prior illegality. It's possible that a prior purchaser used illegal funds to purchase the target property. This would not be readily apparent in the documentation your lawyer will review. However, it's possible that the Colombian government will seek to seize your property based on that prior purchase. I want to be clear here that most of the worst case scenarios we just discussed are exceedingly rare. We've been in the market for over a decade, and at this point, we've managed thousands of transactions. And I can probably count in one hand the number of times any of these issues have come up to affect a transaction. That being said, it doesn't hurt to be proactive in preventing even a hint of some of these worst case scenarios. Here are some general suggestions that can help you mitigate some of these risks. We cannot overestimate the value of an experienced and reputable attorney. They will be able to limit any risks all along the way. More importantly, they have seen it all and can steer you away from a risky transaction. You guys already know our take on local real estate agents. However, a reputable agent will be able to minimize any risks that could affect your purchase. After all, it's their reputation on the line as well. Ask your lawyer to secure as many of the documents that will be used to draft the title analysis directly for public entities. Keep in mind that this may not always be possible. Only the seller can have direct access to some of these documents. Conduct a comprehensive background check on the seller. This may actually uncover information that would encourage you to walk away from the deal. And that's the end of our third episode in the series. We encourage you to watch the remaining episodes in the series so you can gain additional insight into the property purchase process in Colombia. We hope that all the information that we presented was both useful and practical. From myself and the rest of our local team in Colombia, thank you for joining us. Take care, everyone. We hope you enjoyed this video. Please hit subscribe and hit the bell to get the latest content from our local law firm in Colombia.